And welcome to the Aaron Katzman Show. I'm your host, Aaron Katzman. We speak about your life, your money, and your investments. And as always, we're coming to you from the spiritual and soon to be financial capital of the world, Jerusalem, Israel. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. If you've not yet done so, please subscribe to both the YouTube channel and to the podcast. And if you think somebody might actually find this of interest, dun, 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 there's a little share button down below that you can click and send it to them as well. Wow, the unbelievable technology that we're able to do such things. So I found an unbelievable article. Okay, personal finance articles usually are, sort of canned. They're one and the same. They don't make you stop and think for a while. But I just read an article which I really latched onto, because it's something that I have been personally thinking about a lot over the last couple of weeks, both in meetings with clients and just my own situation. It was written by Nick Maguili, if I got his name right, of Dollars and Data. He's also the COO for Ritholtz Asset Management. I'm going to read what he wrote. I'm going to comment along the way. He writes, over the past few months, I've attended a few author dinners in New York City. This is where a group of authors or prospective authors get together and discuss whatever is concerning them. There might be a debate around the future of writing and the impact of AI. We might argue about traditional publishing versus self-publishing and so forth. Almost all of the authors or prospective authors aren't in the personal finance space, and they tend to be older and far more successful than I am. I don't say this to downplay anything I have done, but to emphasize that there's a difference between selling thousands of books and selling millions. The thing that really surprises me, though, is how they think about money. At some point during the conversation, the discussion inevitably turns to personal finance. And when it does, it's always an eye-opener. For example, he says, one online creator complained about the price of beer at their local brewery. It was $15 after tax and tip. I get it. A beer should feel cheaper than $15, even at a craft brewery. But this complaint is coming from somebody who posts about the millions they've made online. While I don't know their exact financial situation, based on their public earnings alone, they're either deep in level 4, meaning they have a net worth of between $1 and $10 million, or low level 5, which puts them between $10 and $100 million. And they're only in their early 40s, right? This puts them in the top 1% of U.S. households for their age. Yet they're complaining about paying an extra $5 for beer. Their cognitive dissonance is one of the most fascinating things in the world to me. How can you be so wealthy and care about something so insignificant to your finances? You're complaining about the beer, yet you can buy the brewery. Isn't that great? I love that that image almost, right? Buying the beer, you could buy the brewery, right? And you're complaining about the price of the beer. Recently, I had that. Somebody was complaining to me, somebody who does very, very well. They were buying, I want to say a tablet, a laptop, something like that. I don't really remember. And they had a chance to get a little cheaper. Basically, let's call it in dollar terms, $50, $60 cheaper. Now, these people do a lot. It's not even $5 beer. It's a little more than that, but you get the point, right? And they were furious that they weren't able to take advantage of the deal, and they had to pay a little bit more for it. And I was just thinking to myself, a little perspective, right? No, we shouldn't overpay, right? And throwing away money that we don't need to, if it's something very, very simple, is silly. I agree with that. But it shouldn't create, negativity in your situation. It shouldn't get you bummed, right? In the vernacular, in the local vernacular. It shouldn't get bummed because you paid an extra $50 when you're making hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in salary. It really doesn't make a difference. So that's why I'm sort of connecting with this in terms of that, with the $5 on a beer for somebody who's, has a net worth potentially between 10 and $100 million. He continues, you might argue that such complaints are just performative or used as a way to connect, but I don't think that's the case. Such spending gripes typically occur unprompted and are always about individual expenses, not the price level in general, how these prices could impact others. In fact, for the wealthy, I'm adding this, right? For the wealthy, inflation is less impactful, right? Because, like I say, right, something costs $50 more and you're making $100,000 a year, it doesn't make a difference to you. Whereas if you're making minimum wage and something costs 10% more, that's the difference between a full fridge and an empty fridge. But spending issues are just the tip of the iceberg, he writes. I also get a sense of financial insecurity from some of those people who should have nothing to worry about, right? People who have net worth between 10 and $100 million, who are concerned about the success of their next project. People in the 1% who still seem dissatisfied. And if they are dissatisfied, then how should I feel? It reminds me of that Chris Rock joke. If Bill Gates woke up with Oprah's money, he'd jump out the window. would, would you be content as Oprah in this scenario? I would. However, some people wouldn't. The core issue is that wealth is almost always judged on a relative basis, even when it shouldn't be. Alain de Botton summarizes beautifully in Status Anxiety, where he writes, wealth is not an absolute. It's relative to desire. Every time we yearn for something we cannot afford, we grow poorer, whatever our resources. And every time we feel satisfied with what we have, we can be counted as rich, however little we may actually possess. Now, there's in Judaism, in the Mishnaic literature, we say, in Ethics of the Father, we say, who is rich? Whoever is happy with whatever they have, right? That sort of fits right into it. It came, 1,500, 2,000 years pre to what Botton writes, but it's the same concept. Now, I see this also. I remember during Corona, right? Wealthy people that I knew, they might have lost 20% of their net worth, or 15 or 20% of their net worth. Could be $100 million they lost. And we would say, well, okay, you still have, $350 million. Okay. It really didn't impact your life at all. But for them, it was like the world was ending. Oh my gosh. Right. Most of us can't fathom that. Right. But it's the same thing on our level. Right. But for people who have all of this, what does it matter? Right. But for them, it really, really does. And then he writes, the bigger problem is when people yearn for things that they imagine they need. Then they can justify their behavior to acquire more money, even when that won't ultimately solve their problems. The more successful people I've met, the more I realize this to be true. Financial security isn't what they're chasing, even if they say otherwise. It's something deeper. And then he goes on. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's fascinating. I know somebody who recently paid off their mortgage really early. They took a 25-year mortgage. I think they paid it off in 11 years, 12 years. And they, full bore, they went to pay off their mortgage. And what happened at the end of the day? Well, he was all proud that he did it, which is great. It's a great financial accomplishment. About 2 weeks later, I was speaking to him again. I said, how does it feel? And he says, I always watch, as I do also. I'm a big fan of Dave Ramsey. Okay. And Dave Ramsey has his debt-free screams where people come on and, they tell their story, how they managed to get out of debt. And oftentimes people who also paid off their house early, significantly early. And, they felt like when he asked them, well, how does it feel? And they go, it's amazing. I've got this amazing feeling paying off a house. So I spoke to this guy. I said, we both have this, we share a fondness for Dave Ramsey and his debt-free screams. So how did you feel by paying off your house? 2 weeks later, he goes, you know what? I'm glad I did it, but I don't feel like on top of the moon. I don't feel any different than I did before. And I said, but they always tell you I no longer have a mortgage payment. He goes, yeah, it's true, but it's not the feeling that I thought it would be, which I thought was really, really interesting. It's another issue that people have when they struggle when they get older is that how do you balance spending, enjoying the money you've managed to accumulate, with being prudent so that you have enough money, to make it to 120 or however long you're going to live, number one, and how much you're going to leave to kids. I think about that all the time, right? Because I'm a big believer in the work ethic and that children should, make it their own way, because that's what I did and I wasn't really given anything, and the value of that. And, giving your kids, millions of dollars as an inheritance, I don't know. To me, it's not. It doesn't resonate with me. I think they should earn it. On the other hand, I would like them to, they should inherit money. They should be given things. I am not anti that. Um, I don't think you have to go to the extreme. I think there's a middle ground, and I think people always search for it. Should you take that vacation and create memories with your family, or should you save that $10,000 or whatever it costs, because one day in the future you might need it? There's no answer to that. And the only way to know is after the fact, right? When it's too late, we sort of know what we should have done, I guess. It's an interesting question. I encourage all of you to think about it. This is a part of personal finance, which I sort of find interesting, the philosophical part. But it's a really interesting question, right? How do you know? What should you do? Should you just save, save, save? Should you spend, spend, spend? That's probably not a good idea. And the other one's, right, probably somewhere in the middle. But how do you make that middle work for you? And the ramifications later on. There's no right answers to this, but it pays to think about it and sort of create a path which will work for you. Just food for thought. You've been tuning into the Aaron Katzman Show. We speak to you about your life, your money, and your investments. If you like this content, please hit the like button below. If you've not yet done so, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. And if you think somebody might find this of interest, it's probably one of the more interesting ones I've ever done, believe it or not. Why don't you share it with them as well? Thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll speak to you soon.